Ahoy there, crew! This is your captain speaking, and today we're transforming the ego of pride and the destructiveness of wrath into both beautiful and terrifying divine forms. A while ago, I took the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and turned them into characters, but today it's the 7 deadly sins' turn to be turned into gods and goddesses. We'll start with the first and most prominent of the sins, pride. It's known to encourage more sins and other immoralities. Because of this, I think this character will definitely be a pseudo-leader for the group, something like a motherly figure maybe. Let's name her Kimi. It has a few meanings: righteous, hope, valuable, and beautiful, qualities that have certainly gone to her head. Kimi is of the belief that she is better and more important than others. It stems from the need to keep herself from being vulnerable and her desire to be in control. This is part of the reason why I decided to base her design off of an oiran. They were high-ranking Japanese courtesans and entertainers, similar to geisha, that usually only met with the rich and powerful. They wear very extravagant kimono and accessories. This is perfect for Kimi since she does like to show off, just like a peacock, which is the animal I paired her with. I even gave her some of its feathers as an accessory. I really wanted to pair an animal with each sin to serve them as an envoy and add to that symbolism. Those who managed to gain her favor are approached by her messenger and granted great talent and beauty. Her followers are usually entertainers ranging from actors to bards, though there is the occasional person lusting for beauty or power. Going back to Kimi's connection to Japanese culture, I wanted to tie in some folklore. I was specifically drawn to the Tengu. It's a type of yokai or Shinto god that is typically depicted as having human, monkey, or bird features. They are also often depicted as having a red face and long nose. They are spirits of the mountain and forest, so I stuck to adding nature patterns to her clothing. Now you might be wondering what Tengu actually have to do with her. From early on, Tengu were perceived to be ghosts of the angry and arrogant, so what better fit is there for Kimi? As an obvious reference to this, I gave her a Tengu mask. There is just one more thing I want to mention about her design. In Dante's Divine Comedy, there is mention of punishments for the 7 deadly sins. I really wanted to include these, or more references to them. The punishment for pride is to be broken on the wheel. There are a lot of versions of wheel torture. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be something specific. To reference Kimi's punishment, I gave her a ring-shaped hair accessory with cloth pieces tied to it to look like a wheel with spokes. I believe the purpose of this punishment is to humiliate the prideful. Humility just so happens to be the heavenly virtue that opposes pride. But now that I've finished talking about her design, let's get into her story. How on earth did she become a goddess? She was once human after all. From a very young age, she trained day in and day out and eventually rose to the rank of oiran. Not long after attaining this rank, tragedy struck, or rather, revenge. She did step on a lot of toes over the years. Another courtesan finally snapped and attacked her. She was left with a scar across her face. Her beauty, a large source of her pride, was now tainted. This scar is the reason for her mask being cracked. Her attendees tried desperately to cover the scar, but makeup could only do so much. Kimi's hope and temper wore thin. One night, as she gazed up at the moon, a voice spoke to her, promised her beauty back in exchange for one thing: an eternal duty once her human life ended, and she accepted the offer. Upon her death, she ascended and became the goddess of beauty, talent, and pride. I absolutely adore how Kimi looks. She's very elegant and imposing. Just popping in to remind you that my commissions are open, so if you like my art and would like some for yourself, go check out my VGen. If you'd like to support me in another way though, I also have a Ko-fi where you can donate a little something. But enough of that, let's get back to the video. Just like pride, wrath is also quite something to behold. This sin is related to a strong hatred or resentment, often without proper reason. This character will then obviously be the most hot-headed of the group. She'll be angered quite easily. Kimi is often the one that keeps her in line because she believes the beautiful mustn't concern themselves with their lessers. Kimi doesn't say it directly, but she thinks our wrathful goddess is quite pretty. They're not meant to be a ship though, I just imagine they have more of a mother-daughter or mentor-student-like bond. Our Wrath needs a name though, so let's call her Brunhild. It's a Norse name that means armed for battle, and she surely is. Even when she's not armed, at least she's ready. She's as fierce as a wolf, which is the animal I decided to pair her up with. To tie this into her Norse roots, I decided to take some inspiration from Norse mythology and Vikings. More specifically, I want her to parallel Fenrir a little bit. He was a giant wolf raised by the Aesir gods. They wanted to keep him under control and well behaved. He grew very quickly, so eventually the gods decided to chain him up. His mouth was held open by a sword, and from his mouth flowed a river. So I used water as a motif in Brunhild's design. It also works with Vikings and their longboats. But let's pedal back a bit. The reason the gods went through so much trouble is because it had been prophesied that Fenrir would destroy everything in his path before finally killing Odin. Since Odin's fate is so closely tied to Fenrir, I wanted to make a little reference to him too. He lost one of his eyes in the pursuit of knowledge, so I decided to carry that element over to Brunhild's design. Now to talk about her backstory a bit. As a baby, Brunhild was found abandoned on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. The traveling family that found her decided to take her in. They were genuinely kind at first, but soon started to treat her with some concern. She was growing way too fast to be a human baby. She was a half-giant, and they feared her for it. At home, they locked her in the cellar, saying it was for both her and their protection. On the bright side, they still recognized her as a child and fed and spoke to her as such. They dreaded the day that she would escape her prison. Her patience was visibly wearing thin. With every passing day, she looked at them with more and more contempt. One day, she finally snapped. She ended up essentially demolishing the village she hadn't seen for years, along with her so-called adoptive family. She was alone and afraid, and as she stared up at the moon, she heard a voice whispering sweet promises. A new family, an understanding one that would stand by her for all eternity. What else could she do than to believe those words floating down to her? Upon making her decision, she ascended to godhood, ready to meet her new family. She became the goddess of justice, strength, and wrath. Now, I don't want you to think she's a violent monster. The vibe she has in my head is more that she's just a volatile, naive, and strong girl that doesn't always realize her strength. She just gets worked up very easily. She's usually very sweet, even though she enjoys a good fight. I really want to drive that point home when characterizing her followers. They tend to be people that have been severely wronged or are put in a position where they have to fight like a soldier, for example. Brunhild is the goddess that grants the most blessings out of the group and often tends to them herself rather than sending a messenger. That's why I had her wear a wolf belt rather than just referencing one. Kimi often tries to reel her in regarding her in-person visits. And finally, the punishment for wrath is quite gruesome. The wrathful's limbs are to be ripped apart. This is because they use their limbs to commit their acts of hatred. To reference this, Brunhild has quite a few scars on her arms and legs, even though you can't see her legs with how her design ended up. The scars make sense though, since she would have been in quite a few battles. I don't think I'd like Brunhild as much as Kimi, but man, she's cute. Her design came out so adorable, I'm not sure if I can even call her Wrath. And with that, my crew, this part has come to a close. I'm not sure whether I like Kimi or Brunhild more, but I'd love to know which of them stands out to you down in the comments. If you like seeing these deadly sins brought to life, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss the next part. I plan on drawing greed, gluttony, and sloth next, but that is all for today, crew. I'll see you again for our next voyage. Bye bye!